Hello everyone, I'm Ryan, and I'm here to guide you today through the shadows of the Appalachian Mountains. If you use this video to fall asleep, please like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now settle in, get comfortable, and relax. Something wears my daughter's voice in the mountains. The last photograph Jennifer Marsh posted to Instagram showed her boots, expensive Merrell hiking boots, barely broken in, sitting side by side on a flat rock overlooking Copperhead Gorge. The caption read, "Found these just sitting here, no one around for miles, kind of creepy LOL." That was 11:23 a.m. on September 19th. By 11:45 a.m., Jennifer had posted nothing else. By noon, her phone went offline. By sunset, search and rescue found those same boots, still on that rock, still perfectly placed. But they weren't alone anymore. Jennifer's boots had been joined by 3 other pairs, all arranged in a neat line, all facing the forest. None of the boots belonged to Jennifer Marsh. They belonged to people who disappeared years ago. Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her palms against the cold metal table in the ranger station briefing room, staring at the photograph of those boots. 4 pairs, 8 boots. 8 people who'd walked into the Appalachian wilderness and never walked out. The Rangers had cataloged them, run the serial numbers, matched them to missing persons reports going back 7 years. 4 different disappearances, 4 different years, all in a 12-mile radius around Copperhead Gorge, and now Jennifer made 5. "Tell me again about the arrangement," Sarah said to Ranger Marcus Webb, a 30-year veteran whose face had been carved into permanent concern by decades of searching for people who didn't want to be found or couldn't be. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed her the photos he'd taken at the scene, perfectly aligned, toes pointing northeast toward the deep woods. No scuff marks, no drag marks, no indication they'd been moved or placed recently. It's like they just materialized there. "People don't take off their boots and walk into the wilderness barefoot," Sarah said. "The terrain alone would shred their feet in minutes." "I know. So someone's collecting them, taking them from the victims and staging them." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, "We found Jennifer's footprints, bare footprints. They led off the trail into the underbrush and continued for about 300 yards before they just stopped." "Stopped how?" "Stopped, mid-stride, like she took one step and then ceased to exist. No signs of struggle, no blood, no disturbance of the surrounding area. The prints just end, and there's nothing beyond them except undisturbed forest floor." Sarah had been studying Appalachian disappearances for 3 years, ever since her younger sister Emma had vanished during a college hiking trip in these same mountains. Emma's boots had been found too, sitting outside her tent, placed together with the precision of someone who'd been taught by a drill sergeant to make their bed properly. Emma had been in the army. She never left her boots anywhere but in perfect order. The official report said Emma had likely succumbed to hypothermia after wandering from camp in a confused state. But Emma had been an experienced winter camper. She knew the dangers. She knew the protocols. And more than that, Sarah had found her journal, the one the Rangers had somehow missed. The last entry, dated the night before Emma disappeared, read, "The trees are wrong here, their shadows don't match their shapes." And I keep hearing Sarah's voice calling me from the woods, but Sarah's in Boston. She's 400 miles away. I know she's 400 miles away. So why can I hear her so clearly? Why does she sound so scared? Sarah had never told anyone about that journal entry. How could she? It made Emma sound unhinged, paranoid. But Sarah knew her sister. Emma didn't panic. Emma didn't imagine things. If Emma said the trees were wrong, then something about the trees was wrong. Now, sitting in this briefing room with photos of abandoned boots spread across the table like evidence of mass desertion, Sarah made a decision she'd been avoiding for 3 years. "I want to go out there," she said, "to Copperhead Gorge. I want to see where the boots were found." Marcus's expression darkened. "Dr. Chen, with respect, that's a terrible idea. 5 people have vanished in that area. We don't know what's causing it." Animal attacks, environmental hazards, human predation. But whatever it is, it's lethal, and it's consistent. Which is exactly why I need to see it. I've been studying the patterns of Appalachian disappearances. There are commonalities that don't make sense through conventional analysis. Experienced hikers vanishing in fair weather. Children found miles from their last known location, across terrain they couldn't possibly traverse. People leaving their shoes behind like it's some kind of ritual. Sarah leaned forward. And the voices. Multiple survivors have reported hearing familiar voices calling them into the forest. Voices of people they know, people who couldn't possibly be there. You think it's what? Some kind of mass hallucination? I think the mountains are older than we can imagine, and I think something lives in them that understands how to make people disappear. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Your sister, Emma Chen, she disappeared here 3 years ago. Yes. And you think going to Copperhead Gorge will help you find out what happened to her? I think, Sarah said carefully, that if I don't go, more people will disappear, and I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have stopped it. The ranger sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. I can't officially sanction this, but if you're determined to go, you don't go alone. I'll find you a guide, someone who knows the terrain and knows the peculiarities of that area. Peculiarities? Dr. Chen, people have been disappearing in these mountains for as long as people have been hiking them. Native American tribes avoided certain areas entirely, called them the Hungry Lands. Early settlers reported whole families walking into the forest and never returning. The patterns you're studying? They go back centuries. And the people who live here, who've been here for generations, we know there are places you don't go. Times you don't go there. Rules you follow if you want to come back. What rules? Marcus pulled out a worn notebook, flipped to a page covered in cramped handwriting. If you hear someone call your name from the forest, you don't answer. You don't acknowledge it. Even if it sounds exactly like someone you know, someone you love, you ignore it. If you see a staircase in the woods, stone, metal, doesn't matter, you don't look at it directly, you don't touch it, and you sure as hell don't climb it. If the forest goes completely silent, you stop moving immediately and you wait. Could be 5 minutes, could be an hour. But you wait until the sounds return. And if you smell flowers where no flowers should grow, particularly in autumn or winter, you turn around and you leave. Those sound like superstitions. They are superstitions. Superstitions that people who follow them tend to survive, and people who don't tend to end up as missing person statistics. Marcus closed the notebook. Your sister's journal, the one you haven't told anyone about. Did she mention following any of these rules? Sarah's throat tightened. How did you? Because I found journals at 3 other disappearance sites. The victims all wrote about hearing voices, seeing things that shouldn't be there, feeling watched, and none of them knew the rules. Or if they did, they didn't follow them. He stood, walked to a filing cabinet, pulled out a folder. Tommy Jessup, local guide, been hiking these mountains for 60 years. He disappeared in 1994, but we found his journal in 1997. His last entry said he'd finally figured out what the staircases were for, said he was going to climb one, to prove it was all nonsense. We found his body 3 years later, 15 miles from his last known location. His feet were destroyed, every bone shattered, flesh torn, like he'd run through a meat grinder. But his boots were outside his tent, perfectly placed without a drop of blood on them. Sarah took the folder, opened it. Inside were photocopied pages from Tommy's journal, his handwriting deteriorating over the final entries, becoming frantic, less coherent. The last page was almost illegible, but she could make out certain phrases. Not trees, they're wearing his face, but eyes are wrong. Counted 47 staircases today, same staircase moving following. Sarah was right, the trees have faces. Sarah's vision blurred. He mentioned someone named Sarah. Local woman who disappeared in 1989. She'd been warning people about the staircases for years before she vanished. People thought she was crazy. Marcus paused. Until she turned out to be right. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in her motel room. the Mountain View Lodge, which had no mountain view but did have questionable plumbing and a persistent smell of mildew, and stared at the ceiling, thinking about boots and staircases and voices in the forest. Her phone buzzed at 2:47 a.m., a text from an unknown number. "Don't go to the gorge." Sarah sat up, heart hammering. She typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, someone who followed the rules and survived. The gorge is different. The rules don't work there. It's where they're strongest. Where who is strongest? No response. Sarah tried calling the number. It rang once, then went to a voicemail box that hadn't been set up. She tried texting again. The messages showed as undelivered. She got out of bed, walked to the window. The motel backed up to the forest, the tree line maybe 50 yards from her room. In the darkness, she could see nothing but shadows and the occasional glint of eyes. Animals, probably. Raccoons or possums. Then, in the distance, a light. Flickering orange like a campfire or lantern. It moved through the trees, weaving left and right, appearing and disappearing behind trunks. Sarah watched it, transfixed. There was something hypnotic about its movement, something that made her want to open the door, walk out into the parking lot, cross that distance to the tree line and follow that light to wherever it led. Her hand was on the doorknob before she realized what she was doing. She jerked back, heart pounding, breath coming in sharp gasps. What the hell? She'd been about to walk out in her pajamas, barefoot, into the forest in the middle of the night, following a mysterious light like some fairy tale character too stupid to live. She looked back at the window. The light was gone. But standing at the tree line, just visible in the parking lot's dim illumination, was a figure. Tall, unnaturally thin, perfectly still. It might have been a person. It might have been a dead tree. But Sarah had the overwhelming certainty that it was watching her window, watching her, waiting to see if she would open that door. She backed away from the window, grabbed her phone, pulled up the photos Marcus had shown her of Jennifer Marsh's last Instagram post. She zoomed in on the background, on the forest behind those neatly arranged boots. There, barely visible in the shadows between the trees, a figure, the same tall, thin shape. In every photo, in slightly different positions, always watching. Sarah didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The guide Marcus assigned her was named Jolene Whitaker, a 40-something woman with weather-beaten skin and eyes that had seen too much. She arrived at the ranger station at dawn, carrying a pack that looked military-issue and wearing boots so worn they might have been older than Sarah. "You're the one who wants to go to Copperhead," Jolene said. Not a question. "Yes." "You know what happened to the last 5 people who went there?" "I know they disappeared." "They didn't disappear. They were taken. There's a difference." Jolene set her pack down, pulled out a map. "I'll take you, but we do this my way. We follow my route, we follow my timing, and we follow the rules. All of them. No exceptions, no questions, no matter what you see or hear. You break the rules, I leave you there. Understand?" "That seems harsh." "I've guided 23 expeditions into the deep Appalachian wilderness. All 23 groups came back intact. Know how many guides can say that?" Jolene's expression was granite. Three guides in the entire mountain range who haven't lost someone. You want to know why? Because we're the ones who follow the rules, who respect what lives here, and who don't take stupid risks for stupid reasons. My sister disappeared 3 years ago, I know. Marcus told me. Jolene's voice softened fractionally. "I'm sorry for your loss, but grief makes people reckless, and reckless people don't come back from the gorge." They left at 7 a.m., starting from the Copperhead Gorge trailhead, a narrow dirt parking area that could fit maybe 6 cars. Only one other vehicle was there, a Honda Civic with Massachusetts plates. Jolene photographed it, noted the license number. "Why?" Sarah asked. "Because if we find their boots, someone needs to notify next of kin." The trail began innocuously enough. Well-marked, recently maintained, the kind of scenic Appalachian path that attracted weekend hikers and Instagram photographers. But within an hour, the character changed. The trees grew denser, older, their trunks twisted into shapes that seemed almost deliberate, almost intentional. The undergrowth thickened, the trail narrowed to barely a footpath, and the sounds changed. At first, normal forest sounds, birds, insects, the rustle of small animals in the brush. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, these sounds diminished until they were hiking through near silence, their boots on dirt the loudest thing in the world. Jolene stopped, held up a hand. Sarah froze. They stood there for 5 minutes, maybe 10. Sarah's legs began to ache from holding still. She wanted to ask what they were waiting for, wanted to shift her weight, wanted to do anything except stand motionless on a silent forest trail, while her imagination painted horrors in every shadow. Then, distant but clear, a bird called. Then another. The forest sounds returned like someone had unmuted the world. "Okay," Jolene said. "Keep moving." What was that? That was the forest checking us, seeing if we knew the rules. If we'd kept walking, kept making noise during the silence, we'd have attracted attention. The wrong kind of attention. Attention from what? Jolene didn't answer. By noon, they'd covered 7 miles and reached a ridge overlooking Copperhead Gorge. The gorge was a deep, narrow ravine carved by eons of water erosion, its sides steep and covered in that same dense, ancient forest. At the bottom, maybe 500 feet down, a stream glinted silver in the dappled sunlight. Jennifer Marsh was found down there, Jolene said, pointing to a rocky outcropping about halfway down the gorge's eastern face. Or rather, her boots were. The other boots, the ones that matched missing persons from previous years, were arranged in a line leading down the slope, like breadcrumbs. Have you been down there? To the exact spot? Once, 4 years ago, looking for a missing teenager. Jolene's face was unreadable. Found his boots, found something else too. What? A staircase. Stone, about 20 steps, rising out of the gorge wall like it had been there for centuries. Except it hadn't been there a month before when I'd guided a nature photography group through this same area. It was new. And at the top of the stairs, standing on a step that shouldn't support weight. Jolene stopped, took a breath. I saw my daughter, Sarah. She'd died 3 years earlier. Car accident. But there she was, smiling at me, calling me, asking me to climb up so we could go home together. Sarah's blood ran cold. Your daughter's name was Sarah? Is that significant? Tommy Jessup's journal. He mentioned someone named Sarah warning people about the staircases, and my sister's name was Emma. But Sarah pulled out her phone, showed Jolene the text from the unknown number. Someone texted me last night, told me not to come to the gorge. Jolene stared at the message for a long time. What did you do? When you saw your daughter? I followed the rules. I didn't look at the staircase directly. I didn't acknowledge her. I turned around and I walked away. Jolene's voice was hollow. And I heard her crying behind me, begging me to come back, screaming that she was scared, that she needed her mom, that she didn't understand why I was leaving her. Every maternal instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around, to go to her, to protect my baby girl. But I didn't, because I knew that whatever was calling me with my daughter's voice, it wasn't her. It was something else wearing her face. But you heard it again after you left? I hear it every time I come to the gorge. Sarah calling me, sometimes from the forest, sometimes from below the gorge rim, like she fell and needs help. Once I heard her voice coming from my own pack, like she was trapped inside somehow. Jolene turned away. The hardest part isn't ignoring it. It's knowing that if I ever slip, if I ever forget the rules for even a moment and call back to her, I'll disappear just like everyone else, and someone will find my boots placed neatly beside the trail, and they'll add me to their statistics, and the thing wearing Sarah's voice will just keep calling, looking for the next person to trick. They descended into the gorge using a steep, treacherous path that seemed to exist more by accident than design. Twice Sarah's foot slipped on loose rocks. Each time Jolene caught her, steadied her, her grip strong and sure. At the bottom, the temperature dropped 20 degrees. The stream that had looked so picturesque from above was dark and sluggish here, its water the color of old tea. The sound of it should have been peaceful, running water over rocks. But instead it was discordant, almost rhythmic, almost like whispering voices layered over each other. "Don't listen to the stream," Jolene said. "Don't try to make out what it's saying. It's just water. No, it's not. Listen properly and you'll hear it. Words, names, hundreds of them." Sarah listened despite herself. And Jolene was right. Beneath the burble and rush there were voices, faint, overlapping, impossible to distinguish individually but unmistakably there. She heard syllables, fragments. "Help me? Can't find? So cold? Where did—" She stumbled, caught herself against a rock. How is that possible? Same way staircases appear in the forest. Same way people hear their loved ones calling them. Same way boots show up without the people who wore them. Jolene was moving along the stream bank, eyes scanning the ground. The gorge is thin. That's the best way I can explain it. The barrier between what should be and what shouldn't be, it's thin here. Things leak through. Or maybe things that were always here have learned to push through. Either way, this is where it happens most. They found the outcropping where Jennifer Marsh's boots had been discovered. The rock was flat, about 6 feet wide, perfect for sitting and taking in the view. Except the view was wrong. From here, looking up, the gorge walls seemed to tilt inward, seemed to lean over the stream like they were slowly closing, like the gorge was a mouth that was gradually swallowing itself. And on the rock, barely visible, were marks. Scratches maybe, or stains. They formed patterns, not random wear, but deliberate designs. Circles within circles, lines radiating outward, symbols that Sarah didn't recognize but that made her deeply, viscerally uncomfortable to look at. "Those weren't here 4 years ago," Jolene said quietly. "What are they?" "I don't know. But I've seen similar marks at 3 other disappearance sites. They appear after someone goes missing, like a signature. Like whatever takes them leaves a mark to claim the territory." Sarah knelt, pulled out her phone to photograph the symbols. As she framed the shot, her camera picked up something her eyes hadn't. A figure standing in the stream about 20 yards downstream, half hidden by the spray of a small waterfall. She lowered the phone, looked directly at the spot. Nothing there. Just water and rocks and shadows. She raised the phone again. The figure was back. Clearer now. A woman, tall and thin, wearing what might have been a white dress. Her face was turned toward the camera, toward Sarah. "Jolene," Sarah whispered. "Look at my phone screen. Do you see her?" Jolene looked. Her face went pale. "Put the phone down. Right now. Don't look at the screen. Don't take a picture. Just put it down and back away." Sarah's finger hovered over the capture button. In the screen, the woman was closer now, standing at the base of the waterfall, one arm extended, beckoning. And her face. Sarah dropped the phone. It clattered on the rock, screen cracking. Her face, it was... "I know." Jolene grabbed Sarah's arm, pulled her upright. "We're leaving, now." "But we just got here. Jennifer's boots." "Jennifer's boots are a lure. Can't you see that? Every disappearance leads investigators to a specific site, to specific coordinates, like whatever's doing this wants people to come to these places, wants them to see the symbols, to photograph them, to try to understand them. And everyone who tries ends up missing." They scrambled back up the path, Jolene setting a punishing pace that left Sarah gasping. Behind them, from the gorge bottom, a sound rose, not the whisper of the stream, but voices, clear voices, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all speaking at once, all calling the same thing. Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. Her name. They were all saying her name. She stopped, turned. "Don't." Jolene grabbed her jacket. "Don't look back. That's the most important rule of all. When they call your name, you don't look back." But Sarah couldn't help it. She looked. The gorge was full of people. They stood in the stream, stood on the rocks, clung to the walls, hundreds of figures in various states of preservation, some fresh, some skeletal, some that were barely more than suggestions of human shape. And they were all looking up at her, all with their arms extended, all beckoning, all calling her name in perfect unison. And at the front, standing on the rock where they'd found the symbols, was Emma, her sister Emma. Wearing the same hiking clothes she'd disappeared in, her face exactly as Sarah remembered it, smiling that same slightly lopsided smile that meant she was about to tell a joke. "Sarah," Emma called, her voice clear and bright and achingly familiar. "Sarah, I've been waiting for you. I've been down here for 3 years waiting for you to come find me. Please, please come down. I'm so cold I want to come home." Sarah's feet moved toward the gorge edge. She didn't decide to move them. They just moved, carrying her forward, toward the drop, toward Emma, toward the hundreds of figures that waited below with patient, eternal hunger. Jolene hit her. A full-force slap across the face that snapped Sarah's head to the side and broke whatever spell had gripped her. "Run!" They ran. Up the path, legs burning, lungs screaming, pursued by the sound of hundreds of voices chanting Sarah's name. The syllables overlapping until they became a roar, a wave of sound that crashed against their backs and tried to pull them under. A hand, thin, cold, with too many fingers, reached around a tree trunk and grabbed at Sarah's ankle. She kicked free, kept running. More hands emerged from the undergrowth, from between rocks, from the trees themselves, all grasping, all trying to slow them, to stop them, to pull them back to the gorge where something ancient and hungry waited. They burst from the forest onto the trail proper, the maintained path, the tourist route, and the hands withdrew like they'd crossed some invisible boundary. The voices faded. The forest sounds returned. Birds, insects, wind in the leaves. Sarah collapsed, vomiting into the bushes, her whole body shaking. Jolene stood over her, breathing hard but controlled, eyes scanning the tree line. "It's never been that aggressive before," Jolene said. "They've never physically tried to grab someone. The rules aren't working anymore." Sarah wiped her mouth, tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't support her. "My sister. I saw my sister. You saw something wearing her face, using her voice. But it wasn't her, Sarah. Your sister's dead. Whatever that was, it's not her, and it never was. But it knew things. It knew I'd been looking for her. It knew. It knows everything. That's what makes it so dangerous. Whatever's in the gorge, it can see inside you. Pull out your memories, your fears, your desires, and weaponize them. It shows you exactly what you want to see, tells you exactly what you want to hear. And if you believe it, even for a second, you're lost." They made it back to the parking lot by late afternoon. The Honda Civic with Massachusetts plates was gone. In its place was a different car, older, covered in dust with registration tags from 2019, 4 years out of date. "That's not possible," Sarah said. "We were only gone for 7 hours." Jolene checked her watch, then her phone. Both showed 4:37 p.m. But when she called the ranger station to check in, Marcus sounded confused. "Jolene, where the hell have you been? You were supposed to check in 5 hours ago. We were about to send search and rescue. We left at 7 this morning. It's not even 5 yet. Jolene, you called me at 6 a.m. yesterday to confirm the route. You've been out there for 33 hours. They looked at each other. Sarah's watch said it was October 17th, 4:37 p.m. Her phone said it was October 18th, 3:42 p.m. The clock on the trail kiosk said it was October 15th, 11:23 a.m. Time was wrong. They'd lost a day or gained one, or time itself had fractured around the gorge, around whatever lived there and was bleeding in ways that shouldn't be possible. "We need to leave," Jolene said. "Right now. This place, the rules are breaking down. Something's changing." They drove back to town in silence. Sarah's mind was reeling, trying to process what she'd seen, what she'd heard, trying to reconcile the impossible with the evidence of her own senses. Every rationalization she constructed collapsed under the weight of simple facts. She'd seen her dead sister. She'd heard hundreds of voices in a stream. She'd watched time itself malfunction. At the ranger station, Marcus was waiting with coffee and blankets and the kind of concerned expression that said he'd seen this before. Seen people come back from the gorge, changed, haunted, never quite the same. Tell me what you saw, he said. Sarah told him everything. The symbols on the rock, the figure that appeared only on camera, the voices in the stream, Emma standing with hundreds of others calling her name, begging her to come down. Marcus listened without interrupting. When she finished, he opened a filing cabinet, pulled out a thick folder. You're the 43rd person to report seeing deceased loved ones at Copperhead Gorge. The pattern is consistent. A lure, boots or personal items, leads investigators or family members to specific sites. At those sites, they encounter something that knows intimate details about their lives, that wears familiar faces, that promises reunion or closure or answers, and approximately 60% of those people subsequently disappear. 60%? Sarah's voice cracked. That's more than half. Yes, which is why I'm officially barring you from returning to the gorge, and I'm recommending that the entire area be permanently closed to public access. You can't close a national forest. I can close specific trails for safety reasons, and I can make sure that the specific trails leading to Copperhead Gorge become inaccessible through strategic neglect and removal of trail markers. Marcus pulled out another document, this one heavily redacted. This is from the National Park Service, dated 1962. It's a report on anomalous phenomena in designated Appalachian wilderness areas. The relevant section discusses what they called predatory environmental manipulation, locations where the terrain itself appears to actively facilitate disappearances. Copperhead Gorge is one of 7 sites identified in this report. Know what happened to the other 6? What? They were all quietly removed from public maps. Trails were rerouted. Access roads were left to decay. Official position was budget cuts and ecological preservation. Real reason? People kept disappearing, and the Park Service couldn't explain it without sounding insane. So they just abandoned those areas? Left whatever's there to keep taking people? What choice did they have? Marcus's frustration was evident. Tell the public that there are places in America's national forests where the laws of nature don't apply, where things that shouldn't exist hunt human beings? They'd be laughed out of office or worse, accused of covering up a human predator. So they did what bureaucracies do. They removed the problem from view and pretended it didn't exist. Sarah thought about the boots. 8 boots representing 5 missing people, arranged like a calling card, like a taunt. It's getting bolder. Whatever it is. The symbols weren't there 4 years ago. The time distortions, the physical grabbing, Jolene said those were new. It's escalating. Or adapting, Jolene said. She'd been quiet since they'd arrived, sitting in the corner with her coffee growing cold in her hands. Animals that hunt humans learn to adapt to human behavior. If this thing, whatever it is, has been here for centuries or longer, it's had a lot of time to study us, to learn what lures us, what scares us, what makes us vulnerable. And now? She trailed off, staring at nothing. Now what? Sarah prompted. Now it doesn't need to be subtle anymore. It's claimed Copperhead Gorge completely. The rules don't work there because it's rewritten them. That area isn't part of our world anymore. It's something else. And it's spreading. Marcus's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went white. We'll be right there. He hung up, looked at Sarah and Jolene. That Honda Civic, the one from Massachusetts that was parked at the trailhead this morning. What about it? State police found it on Highway 441, about 30 miles from here. Abandoned on the shoulder, engine running, doors open. There were 2 people registered to it, a couple from Boston, both experienced hikers. We found their boots in the back seat, placed side by side, perfectly clean. That's impossible, Sarah said. We saw that car this morning. They should still be on the trail. They should be, but their last credit card transaction was for gas at a station in Asheville. Time-stamped 6 p.m. yesterday, 12 hours before you saw their car at the trailhead. The timeline didn't make sense. The couple had bought gas yesterday evening. Then somehow their car had appeared at Copperhead Gorge this morning, where it had remained long enough for Sarah and Jolene to see it, photograph it, note the license plate. And then it had appeared 30 miles away on a highway, abandoned, with the hikers' boots inside, but the hikers themselves nowhere to be found. Time wasn't just wrong around the gorge. It was fracturing, splintering, creating paradoxes that shouldn't exist. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from the unknown number. "I tried to warn you. Now it knows you. It will call you back. Everyone it touches eventually comes back. Don't answer when you hear your name." She showed the text to Marcus and Jolene. "I need to know who's sending these. They know something. They're trying to help." Marcus took her phone, traced the number. It came back to a disconnected line, registered to a cell phone that had been reported lost in 2003. The owner of that phone, Sarah Treadwell, the woman who'd warned Tommy Jessup about the staircases, who'd disappeared in 1989, 14 years before the phone was reported lost. 10 years before cell phones had the number format shown in Sarah Chen's text messages. "This isn't possible," Marcus whispered. "None of this is possible." But Sarah was reading the message again, and a cold certainty was settling over her. Everyone it touches eventually comes back. That's what the text says. Not comes back safe, just comes back. She opened her phone's photo gallery, scrolled back to the pictures she'd taken at the gorge before dropping her phone. Most were corrupted, showing only static or strange artifacts. But one had saved properly, the image of the figure standing in the stream, the woman in the white dress. Sarah zoomed in on the face. It was her. Dr. Sarah Chen, exactly as she looked now, down to the same clothes she was wearing at this moment. But the Sarah in the photo was different somehow. Her eyes too reflective, her smile too wide, her proportions slightly wrong, like looking at a photograph that had been subtly manipulated but in ways the conscious mind couldn't quite identify. She showed the image to Jolene and Marcus. Both recoiled. "That's not possible," Jolene said. "You took that photo hours ago. You were standing right next to me. You weren't in the stream." "I know. So who the hell is that?" Sarah had no answer. Or rather, she had an answer that her rational mind refused to accept. The thing in the gorge could reach through time. It didn't just lure people with the voices of the dead. It showed them images of their own futures. The trail markers point deeper. Every time you look. The first thing Detective Rachel Morrison noticed about the Holloway family's campsite was how perfect it looked. Too perfect. The tent stood pristine in the clearing. No tears, no signs of struggle. Sleeping bags rolled with military precision. Camp stove positioned exactly in the center of the fire ring. Propane tank attached, still half full. Even the family's hiking boots, 2 adult pairs, 2 children's, were lined up outside the tent flap like they were waiting for their owners to step back into them. But the Holloways had been missing for 6 days. Rachel crouched beside the boots, careful not to touch them. In her 15 years with the Tennessee State Police, she'd worked dozens of missing persons cases in the Great Smoky Mountains. She knew the statistics. Most lost hikers were found within 72 hours, either alive or dead. After 6 days, the chances of finding someone alive dropped to nearly 0. After 6 days, you were usually looking for bodies. But the Holloways weren't usually. David Holloway was a former Army Ranger and survival instructor. His wife Jennifer was an emergency room nurse. Their kids, Michael, age 10, and Sophie, 10, age 7, had been hiking these mountains since they could walk. This wasn't some inexperienced family from the city who'd wandered off trail and gotten lost. These were people who knew better. "Detective Morrison?" Park Ranger Kyle Chen approached, his face drawn and pale. He'd been working this case since the Holloways were first reported missing, had barely slept in days. "We found something. You need to see it." Rachel followed him down a narrow game trail that branched off from the main campsite. The forest here was old growth, the kind of woods that predated European settlement, where trees grew so thick that even at midday the light came filtered and green and strange. After about 200 yards, Kyle stopped, pointed. On a tree trunk carved deep into the bark. "Help us, they're not rangers." The letters were fresh, sap still bleeding from the cuts. Rachel pulled out her evidence kit. Photographed the carving from multiple angles. When was this found? 20 minutes ago. One of the search dogs picked up a scent trail and led us here. Kyle's hand trembled slightly as he pointed further into the woods. There's more. A lot more. They were everywhere. Carved into trees, scratched into rocks, written in what looked like charcoal on fallen logs. Desperate messages from the Holloway family, scattered through the forest like breadcrumbs. The trail markers are wrong. Don't trust the blazes. Sophie saw them changing. We've passed this tree 5 times. The forest is moving around us. And then, most disturbing of all, carved into a massive oak tree in letters 2 feet high. If you're reading this, we're already dead. Rachel's stomach tightened. She'd seen panic before, had read final messages from people who knew they weren't making it out. But this felt different. The handwriting in the earlier messages was controlled, methodical. David Holloway documenting their situation, like the trained soldier he was. But the messages got progressively more frantic, more desperate, the letters less careful, until the final message looked like it had been gouged into the tree with fingernails rather than a knife. Detective. Kyle's voice was barely a whisper. The thing is, we've had teams searching this area for 5 days. We've walked this exact trail a dozen times. These carvings, they weren't here yesterday. I know they weren't here yesterday. Rachel looked at him sharply. That's not possible. The sap is dried. These cuts are at least a few days old. I know what I saw, or didn't see. Kyle pulled out his phone, showed her a photo time-stamped from yesterday afternoon. This is the same oak tree, same angle, no carving. In the photo, the tree trunk was bare. No 2-foot-high letters, no desperate final message, just bark and moss and the random imperfections of ancient wood. Rachel's radio crackled. All units, we have a development. Family dog just showed up at the ranger station. Repeat, the Holloway family dog has returned. They ran back to the station, Rachel's mind racing. The Holloways had brought their golden retriever, Max, a 6-year-old therapy dog that Jennifer used in her work with trauma patients. In all the witness statements, family friends had mentioned how well-trained Max was, how he never left the family's side. The dog was sitting in the station parking lot, perfectly calm, perfectly clean. Not a burr in his coat, not a scratch on his paws. After 6 days in the wilderness, he looked like he'd just come from a grooming appointment. Around his collar was a piece of paper, folded and secured with duct tape. Rachel's hands shook slightly as she removed it, unfolded it, read the message written in David Holloway's precise handwriting. To whoever finds this, we are 8 miles past the red trail markers, following what we thought was the Appalachian Trail. The markers keep changing. Every time we turn around, they point in different directions. We've been walking in circles for 3 days, but our GPS shows we've traveled 47 miles. That's impossible. The forest is wrong here. The trees move when we're not looking. We hear other hikers calling for help, but when we follow the voices, we find empty forest. Last night, Michael saw someone standing at the edge of our campsite. When I shined my flashlight on them, they looked exactly like me. Same clothes, same face, same scar on my left cheek. But when it smiled, its teeth went all the way back to its ears. We're sending Max back with this note because he's the only one the forest seems to let pass. If you're reading this and we haven't been found, don't send search parties. They'll get lost too. The forest is hungry. It wants more. Burn the woods if you have to. But don't let anyone else come looking. David Holloway. Rachel read the note 3 times, each reading making her skin crawl worse than the last. This wasn't the rambling of someone in distress. This was a trained observer, a man who'd operated in hostile territory, documenting something that shouldn't exist. He's lost it, Kyle said, reading over her shoulder. Heat exhaustion, dehydration, panic. He's hallucinating. All 4 of them? Hallucinating the same things for 6 days? Rachel photographed the note, bagged it as evidence, and explained the dog. Explain how Max is here, clean and healthy after 6 days in the wilderness. Explain the carvings that appeared overnight. Explain any of this. Kyle had no answer. The SAR coordinator, A grizzled veteran named Tom Briggs, who'd been running mountain rescues for 30 years, approached with a topographical map covered in marked locations. "We've got a problem, a big one." He spread the map on the hood of Rachel's car. Red X's marked where each of the Holloway's messages had been found. They should have formed a trail, a progression showing the family's movement through the forest. Instead, they were scattered in a pattern that made no geographical sense. Some messages allegedly carved days apart were on trees less than 50 feet from each other, while others were miles away in terrain so rugged it would take hours to traverse. "There's no logical path," Tom said. "It's like they teleported from location to location, or like—" He stopped, shook his head. "Say it," Rachel prompted. "Or like the forest moved around them, like the terrain itself was shifting, rearranging, keeping them trapped in a space that doesn't follow normal rules." Rachel had been a cop long enough to know that sometimes the impossible was just the improbable that hadn't been explained yet, but she'd also worked enough cases in these mountains to know that sometimes, very rarely, things happened that had no rational explanation. "I'm going in," she said. "Same route the Holloways took. I want to see these trail markers for myself." "That's a bad idea," Tom said flatly. "We send in a detective who gets lost. We're running 2 searches instead of 1. Then I'll take a full SAR team. 6 people, constant radio contact, GPS tracking on all of us. We follow the official trail, document every marker we see, and we're back before dark. 4 hours, maximum." Kyle volunteered immediately. So did 3 other experienced rangers and a SAR volunteer named Amanda Torres, who'd grown up hiking these mountains and knew them like most people knew their own neighborhood. They set out at 1 p.m., following the white blazes of the Appalachian Trail exactly as the Holloways would have. The day was clear, temperature in the mid-70s, perfect hiking weather. Within an hour, Rachel understood why this trail was so popular. Stunning views, well-maintained paths, the kind of scenic Appalachian wilderness that drew hundreds of thousands of hikers every year. At the 2-hour mark, they reached a junction where the white blazes should have directed them east, toward a shelter that was marked on every map. But the blazes pointed west, deeper into the forest, toward terrain that wasn't supposed to have trail access. "That's wrong," Amanda said immediately. "I've hiked this junction 50 times. The blazes point east. They've always pointed east." Rachel pulled out her own map, compared it to the trail markers. Amanda was right. The markers contradicted every official map, every GPS reading, every piece of documentation about this trail. "Maybe they were changed recently," one of the rangers suggested. "Trail rerouting, maintenance?" "There's been no authorized trail work in this sector for 8 months, Kyle said. "I would have been notified." Rachel photographed the markers, checked her GPS. According to the satellite data, they were standing at the exact coordinates where the trail should fork east, but the physical markers pointed west. "We follow protocol," she decided. "We follow the official maps, not the markers." They turned east. The trail was there, exactly where it should be, clearly maintained and well-traveled. They hiked another mile, their radios crackling with regular check-ins to base camp. Everything was normal, routine, exactly what a standard search operation should be. Then Amanda stopped so suddenly that Rachel nearly walked into her. "What's wrong?" Amanda was staring at a tree beside the trail. A massive oak, easily 300 years old, with distinctive bark patterns that made it look like a gnarled face. "I know this tree. We passed it 20 minutes ago." "That's not possible. We haven't doubled back." "I know that tree," Amanda insisted, her voice rising. "See that branch pattern, like a hand reaching up? I noticed it because it looked like the tree was waving. We passed this exact tree 20 minutes ago, heading in this exact same direction." Rachel checked her GPS. They'd walked 1.2 miles from the junction, in a straight line east. There was no way they'd circled back. But when she pulled up the breadcrumb trail on her GPS, her blood went cold. The line showed them walking in circles. Perfect circles, getting smaller and smaller, spiraling inward toward a center point that their GPS identified as being exactly where they stood right now. But they'd walked straight. Rachel knew they'd walked straight. She'd been watching the compass, checking landmarks, following every protocol for maintaining direction in the wilderness. "Everyone check your GPS," she ordered. 6 devices, 6 different readings. According to Rachel's GPS, they were 2 miles east of the junction. According to Kyle's, they were 3 miles west. Amanda's showed them 5 miles north of their actual starting point. The other 3 rangers had equally impossible locations, scattered across a 10-mile radius, but they were all standing together in the same place looking at the same tree. "We're leaving," Rachel said. "Right now. We backtrack to the junction and we get out of here." They turned around and started walking. The trail behind them should have been the trail they'd just traveled, should have led them back to the junction in about 20 minutes. Instead, after 5 minutes of walking, they emerged at the junction again. But it was different. The trail markers now pointed north, toward terrain that was marked on their maps as a sheer cliff face, impassable without climbing gear. "This is wrong," Kyle breathed. "This is all wrong." Rachel's radio crackled. "Base to search team, you are moving away from designated search area. Please confirm your position." She keyed her mic. "Search team to base, we are at Trail Junction Charlie 7, approximately 2 miles from starting point. Requesting immediate extraction. Negative search team. Your GPS beacon shows you 12 miles northeast of Junction Charlie 7. You are off trail in unauthorized wilderness. Return to designated path immediately." 12 miles. They'd been hiking for less than 3 hours, moving at a steady but not aggressive pace. There was no way they'd covered 12 miles. Rachel looked at her team. All of them were experienced, trained, calm under pressure, and all of them looked terrified. "We follow our own tracks back," she decided. "Forget the trail, forget the markers. We literally retrace our footsteps to where we started." They tried. God, they tried. But their footprints led in impossible directions, doubling back on themselves, crossing and recrossing the same patches of ground, forming patterns that couldn't exist if they'd walked in straight lines like they knew they had. Amanda found her own boot print on top of a log she knew she'd never stepped on. Kyle found his prints leading up the trunk of a tree, as if he'd walked vertically up the bark. And then they found the message, carved into a tree in fresh cuts that wept sap. "Turn back. The trail doesn't end. It just keeps feeding." The handwriting was David Holloway's, but underneath it in smaller letters, carved by a different hand, a child's hand. "Daddy says the forest is eating Miles. We walk and walk but never get anywhere. Sophie is scared. I'm scared too. If you find this, tell Mom we love her. Michael." Rachel's throat tightened. Jennifer Holloway was Michael's mother, had been on the hike with them. Michael was writing as if she wasn't there anymore. "We need to move," Kyle said. "Now. We need to—" The forest went silent. Completely, utterly silent. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just 6 people breathing hard in the sudden oppressive quiet, surrounded by trees that seemed to lean inward, seemed to watch, seemed to wait. Rachel's radio crackled with static, then a voice came through. A child's voice, young and frightened. "Hello? Is someone there? We're lost. We can't find the trail. Please help us." "That's Sophie," Amanda whispered. "That's Sophie Holloway." Rachel keyed her mic. "Sophie? Sophie, this is Detective Morrison with the Tennessee State Police. Where are you, honey? Can you tell me what you see around you?" "Trees. Just trees. We've been walking forever and there's only trees. Daddy says—" Static overwhelmed the transmission. Then Sophie's voice returned, but different now. Older, with an echo that shouldn't be there. "Daddy says you shouldn't have come. He says the forest takes everyone who comes looking. He says it's hungry and it's never full and it knows you're here now. Sophie, stay where you are. We're coming to get you." Laughter came through the radio. A child's laughter, but wrong somehow with harmonics that human vocal cords couldn't produce. "You can't get me. I'm not lost. I'm home. We're all home now. The forest gave us faces like the trees and voices like the wind, and we don't need to leave anymore. We just need you to come deeper. Come deeper. Come see what we've become." The radio went dead. Rachel stared at the device, her hands shaking. Around her, the forest remained silent, watching, waiting. And in the distance, barely audible, she heard it. A child singing. The melody was familiar, something her own daughter used to sing, but she couldn't place it. The voice was sweet and clear and utterly wrong. "Move," she ordered. "Pick a direction and move." They ran. No plan, no coordination, just 6 people in absolute panic, crashing through undergrowth, dodging trees, desperate to put distance between themselves and that terrible singing. Branches tore at Rachel's face. Roots seemed to grab at her feet. The forest pressed close, suffocating, malevolent, and everywhere carved into every tree they passed. Messages. The blazes lie. 8 miles becomes 80. We've been walking for days, but the sun never sets. Jennifer disappeared when she looked behind her. Don't look behind you. Rachel looked behind her. The forest was different. The trees were arranged in patterns that couldn't be natural, forming corridors and chambers, creating an architecture of wood and shadow that seemed deliberate, intentional. And standing between the trees, perfectly still, perfectly silent, were figures, dozens of them, hundreds. Men, women, children, all wearing hiking clothes from different eras. Modern REI gear next to 1970s bell-bottoms next to what looked like early 1900s wool suits. All of them watching Rachel's team with eyes that reflected light like animals' eyes, like nothing human. And at the front, closest to Rachel, were the Holloways. David still wore his Army Ranger tattoo, but his skin had taken on the texture of bark, rough and ridged. Jennifer's hair had become moss, growing down her back in sheets of green. Michael and Sophie held hands, their fingers elongated into branch-like appendages, their smiles too wide, showing teeth that went back too far. "Run!" Rachel screamed. They ran deeper into the forest, and the figures followed. Not running, just walking, patient and inexorable, because they knew something Rachel was beginning to understand. There was nowhere to run to. The forest had them. It had had them since the moment they'd noticed the trail markers pointing the wrong direction, since the moment they'd stepped off the official path, since the moment they'd done exactly what the Holloways had done and trusted their eyes over their maps. Kyle fell, scrambling up with a cry of pain. His ankle was twisted, possibly broken. Amanda and another ranger stopped to help him, supporting his weight between them. "Keep going," Rachel ordered. "We stick together." But they weren't together. When Rachel looked around, only 4 of them remained. The other 2 rangers, Jackson and Peters, were gone. Just gone, as if they'd been edited out of reality between one step and the next. "Where?" Amanda started. Their screams came from somewhere behind them, somewhere in the forest, echoing and overlapping until it was impossible to tell if it was 2 people screaming or 20. Then the screams changed. Screams deepened, became something that wasn't quite human anymore, and then stopped altogether. Rachel's radio crackled. Peters's voice. "Detective, don't let them touch you. When they touch you, you start to change. I can feel it. I can feel roots growing inside me. They're turning me into static." Then silence. The remaining 4 huddled together in a small clearing, backs to each other, watching the forest on all sides. The figures stood at the tree line, not advancing, just watching, waiting. Rachel could see more of them now, hundreds upon hundreds, maybe thousands, stretching back into the forest as far as she could see. All of them had once been hikers, campers, people who'd gotten lost in these mountains. All of them had become something else. "My phone has signal," Amanda whispered, her voice breaking. "Full bars. That's impossible out here. That's..." She showed Rachel her screen, full signal strength. But when she tried to call 911, the call connected immediately, too immediately, with no ringtone, no delay. And a voice answered. Amanda's voice, her exact voice, speaking from the phone. "Amanda? Is that you? I'm lost. I can't find the trail. Can you come help me? I'm scared." Amanda dropped the phone like it was burning her. It hit the ground and the screen cracked, but the voice continued, calling her name, begging for help, using her own voice against her. Rachel checked her own phone. Also full signal, also impossible. She tried calling base camp, but instead of the ranger station, she heard her daughter Emily's voice. "Mommy, Mommy, where are you? I'm scared. There are people in the woods and they look like trees and I can't find you and Mommy, please come get me, please." Rachel's 8-year-old daughter was home in Nashville, 300 miles away, safe with her father. Rachel knew this, but the voice was perfect. Exactly right, hitting every maternal instinct she had with surgical precision. "It's using our memories," Kyle realized, his face pale with pain and fear. "It can see inside our heads. It knows what we love, what we fear, who will come running for." The figures began to advance, slowly, carefully, in perfect unison, emerging from the tree line into the clearing. As they got closer, Rachel could see the details that marked them as no longer human. Bark-textured skin, eyes that were not holes in wood, fingers that ended in twigs and leaves instead of fingernails. The Holloway family was in the front row, their transformations more advanced, more complete. "There's no way out, is there?" Amanda asked quietly. Rachel wanted to lie, wanted to say they'd find a way, wanted to give hope. But she'd been a cop too long to lie to people about their chances. "I don't think so." "Then what do we do?" Before Rachel could answer, the Holloway children moved. Fast, impossibly fast, crossing the 10 feet between them and Rachel's group in the blink of an eye. Their wooden fingers wrapped around Amanda's arms, gentle but inexorable, and where they touched, bark began to spread. Amanda screamed as her skin hardened, darkened as roots pushed through her hiking boots and dug into the soil. Kyle fired his service weapon. The bullet passed through Sophie Holloway's chest, leaving a hole that wept sap instead of blood. She smiled her too wide smile and kept walking. Rachel grabbed Kyle and the remaining ranger. She couldn't remember his name, couldn't think past the terror and the certainty that they were going to die here, and ran. One last desperate attempt, one final sprint toward anything that might be safety, might be escape. They burst through a wall of undergrowth and stumbled onto a trail. A real trail, marked with white blazes, clearly maintained. Rachel's GPS suddenly locked onto a signal, showed them less than a mile from the parking area. Hope flared in her chest. "Go!" she screamed. "Run!" They ran down the trail, and it was real, was solid, was actually leading them out. Rachel could see the tree line ahead, could see the parking area, could see her car. They were going to make it. The thought had barely formed when Kyle stopped running, just stopped in mid-stride, frozen like someone had pressed pause on reality. The other ranger kept going for a few more steps before he stopped too, turning slowly to face the forest. "Detective," Kyle said, his voice flat and emotionless. "Don't run. The forest is home, the forest is hungry, the forest is patient. You can run for now, but you'll come back. Everyone comes back. The mountains remember everyone who walks them. And once they remember you, they never let you leave." Rachel ran. Left them standing there, left Kyle with his blank expression and the ranger who'd already turned to walk back into the forest. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs gave out, until she collapsed on the pavement of the parking lot. Safe, out, free. Search and rescue found her there 20 minutes later, unconscious from exhaustion. She woke up in the hospital 3 hours later to news that made her blood run cold. Her GPS tracker had shown her stationary for the entire time she'd been lost. According to every piece of tracking equipment, she'd never left the parking lot. She'd been there the entire time, standing still for 4 hours before collapsing. But her boots told a different story. Covered in mud and scratches, worn like she'd hiked 20 miles. Her clothes torn from branches, bruises and cuts consistent with running through dense forest. And in her pocket, a piece of bark with a message carved in it. "You left, but part of you stayed, and part of us came with you." The search for the Holloways continued for another week before being officially called off. Kyle Chen and the other 3 rangers who'd gone missing with Rachel were never found. Amanda Torres's family held a funeral with an empty casket. Rachel quit the state police a month later. Couldn't explain why. Couldn't articulate the certainty she felt that if she kept investigating the mountains, kept trying to understand what had happened, she'd end up back there, in the hungry forest, where the trail markers pointed deeper and deeper every time you looked. She moved to Phoenix, Arizona. Desert, no forests, no mountains. Took a job doing corporate security. Tried to forget. But sometimes, when she's driving through the city, she sees it in her peripheral vision. A white blaze on a street sign pointing away from the main road, toward an alley that shouldn't be there. Trail markers on the sides of buildings, directing her to turn, to explore, to follow them deeper into a city that suddenly looks different, wilder, more forested than it should be. She never follows them, never acknowledges them, never looks directly at them. But she knows they're there, knows they're spreading, knows the forest isn't contained to the mountains anymore. It's learned to travel, to adapt, to appear in the spaces between attention, in the corners of vision, in the places people don't look carefully enough. And sometimes, late at night, she hears her daughter's voice calling from the backyard, from the dark spaces between houses, from the small patch of trees in the park 2 blocks away. "Mommy, I'm scared. Can you come find me?" Rachel never answers, never goes to look. Locks the doors and windows and puts in earplugs and reminds herself that Emily is asleep in her bed, safe and sound and completely human, with skin that's skin and not bark, with fingers that are fingers and not twigs. But she wonders how long that will last. Wonders if the thing that came back with her from the mountains is patient enough to wait, to watch, to learn the layout of her new life before it strikes. The Appalachian Trail is still open. Hundreds of thousands of people hike it every year. Most of them come back fine, with nothing more dramatic than sore feet and beautiful photos. But every year, a few don't come back. A few find that the trail markers point in directions that aren't on any map. A few discover that the forest is older and stranger and hungrier than anyone admits. A few learn that some things in the mountains have been there since before humans gave them names, and they remember everyone who walks among them. And once the mountains remember you, you never truly leave. Rachel knows this now, knows it every time she catches her reflection and sees that her eyes reflect light just a little bit wrong. Knows it every time she finds splinters under her fingernails even though she hasn't touched wood in weeks. Knows it every time she dreams of walking through endless forests where the trail markers spin and point in all directions at once, and every tree has a face she recognizes, someone who got lost and never came home. The forest is patient, the forest is hungry, the forest is spreading, and the trail markers point deeper every time you look.